Well, it is an honor to be with you all this morning. My name is John Acuff. I live right down the street in Franklin, so this is a bit of a backyard moment for me. We moved up here from Atlanta a few years ago, and I have to tell you, my jeans have gotten tighter now that I've lived in Nashville for a little while. I don't know if you had that experience, but I felt like they met me at the city limits with skinny jeans. And I haven't gone as far to do the unnecessary scarf yet, which is when you wear a scarf with a short sleeve t-shirt. It's a very confusing body temperature message. Because it's as if your neck is saying, I'm so cold I need a scarf, but my arms are too hot for sleeves. So I haven't gone that far yet, but we've had a blast being here. We've been here about 2 years, and we moved here to work with a guy named Dave Ramsey, who's right down the road too. And it's been a couple of Dave fans. It's been a fun experience. And usually when I get to do something like this, when somebody invites me to speak, the purpose of the visit is pretty clear. Humor. You see, I have a sarcastic Christian website called stuffchristianslike.net. Mom, thanks for making the trip. And on it, I try to clear away the clutter of Christianity so that we can see the beauty of Christ. And the way that I do that is with satire and humor. So I write about some of the funny things that happen within church. Things like prayer shot blocks. I don't know if you've ever experienced a prayer shot block. They're kind of this rare unicorn moment of prayer. But when they happen, they are fantastical. And a prayer shot block occurs when somebody in your small group or circle of friends prays for something and everyone else knows God is not going to answer. You know, the second that prayer request leaves their lips, everyone kind of flinches and goes, ooh, he's not going to be down with that one. God is not cool with that request. And you know what it's like. I mean, they're in a bad dating relationship, or maybe they're being impulsive about a job change, or they're in an argument and they're on the wrong side. And so what'll happen is that somebody like Mary will pray, Lord, grow my love with Tim. Lead us towards marriage. Bring us together. Grow my love with Tim. And every one of Mary's friends knows Tim is a punk. He's the worst person on the planet for Mary to be dating right now. So right after Mary prays for her love with Tim, one of her friends will pray, Lord, please give Mary your gift of clarity. Bless her with patience and insight. Open the eyes of her heart that she might hear what you are trying to tell her. And it's as if right as Mary's prayers are floating up to heaven, they get shot blocked right back down to earth. So that's the kind of stuff I write about. I write about things like Jesus jukes. And a Jesus juke is a phrase I came up with to describe that moment when you're having a normal conversation with a friend and they try to juke in some Jesus out of nowhere. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. It happens to me all the time on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at John Acuff. That's what I tweet at. And I write about some of the funny things I see when I travel. Like when you're on a plane and a Christian tries to double convert you. Have you ever had that moment? It's awkward. Because you can see them with the Bible, like they're about to witness to the person next to them, and we don't have a secret handshake. We can be like, I'm down, I'm already in. You know, like talk to the guy next to you, he's reading 50 Shades of Grey. So funny things like that happen to me on planes, but they happen to me at the airport too. One day I was waiting in the terminal for my flight, and there was a bodybuilder next to me. And right in the middle of our waiting together, he stood up, kind of stretched, and then laid down on the ground and started to crank out some push-ups. Right there on the terminal floor. Now, clearly, I'm no stranger to a push-up. I mean, it's dark in here, but you can tell I work my core relentlessly. I get lycopene and keratin. I am all right. But I don't do push-ups at the airport between Starbucks and B1. That's a weird thing. And so I started to tweet about that. And people said funny things back, things like TwitPic, or it didn't happen. We want Instagram proof. Now, one of the rules that I live my life by is that you don't take secret photos of bodybuilders. That does not work out well for anyone. If you want to write that down in your Bible, that's a free one. So I didn't take a photo, but I did write some things on Twitter, and people said funny things, but then out of nowhere, somebody said, don't you wish we were all that disciplined about our Bible reading? Wah, wah. And that's what a Jesus juke is. It's the Christian version of the Debbie Downer moment. And I started to see that everywhere. People would say on Super Bowl Sunday on Facebook, I'm so excited about the big game. And somebody would say, don't you wish Americans were this excited about church on Sunday? Wah, wah. I even saw it with the Hunger Games. People would go, I'm going to the Hunger Games tonight. I'm so looking forward to that. And somebody would say, do you know what I'm looking forward to? More journaling in my quiet time. Just saying. And can we agree that we will not say the phrase just saying? Can we stop that? I mean, Christians use that as a get out of jerk free card, don't they? They say just the worst thing and they go, just saying. Like it makes the previous thing you said invisible. And who in the Bible would have loved that phrase, just saying? The Pharisees. They would have loved that saying. Whoa, Jesus, healed somebody. That's good, you healed somebody. It is the Sabbath. Just saying. So let's not use that phrase. And don't ever confuse a juke with a rebuke. A rebuke is done in love and causes change. A juke is done in pride and causes shame. They're very different things. And so that's what I write about. I write about wishing you had a t-shirt you could wear on Sunday morning that said, I direct deposit my tithe. Because I'll tell you what, I hot potato that offering basket and people are like, he hates baby Jesus. And you can't yell that at church. That's uncomfortable. Still down with the king. I direct deposit. We're good. But if you had a t-shirt, that'd be great. Or maybe if you had a t-shirt that you could wear in the South that said, I attended night service so that you can jog on a Sunday morning without being judged. Because nobody assumes, they must love Jesus. They go to a later service. They assume sweaty heathen. It's going to be a hot one. It's going to be a hot one in hell. So I started to write about things like that. And Zondervan, who publishes the Bible, created a book called Stuff Christians Like, which is crazy to me. I mean, the first chapter of the Stuff Christians Like book is how Christians rank honeymoon sex slightly higher than the second coming of Christ. Because when I was in high school and college, I'd pray, Jesus, don't you come back yet. Give me one solid week of marriage first. Don't come back yet. And so I got to do these things like write a book and go speak places, and it was fun, but I found myself stuck in a tension. And the tension was that my day job had nothing to do with this other thing. I felt like I'd bumped into what Jesus was calling me to do, what God had prepared me to do, but it didn't match the 40 hours of my week wherein I was in a cubicle working in an IT department. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you find something and you go, this is what I was made to do. You go on a mission trip, you have a conversation with a friend, and then you kind of have to re-enter the real world. And it's a hard transition. And I started to talk to other people, and I realized we're kind of becoming the I'm but generation. When I ask somebody what they do, they always tell me the same thing. I'm a teacher, but I want to be an artist. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I want to start my own business. I'm a customer call center rep, but I want to be a musician. I'm a blank, but I want to be a blank. And there's a lot of us that feel that tension, that know we are created for more than what we're doing right now, more than what we're doing, but don't know how to get there and feel stuck. And that's where I was at. For 10 years, I was a serial quitter. I had 8 jobs, jumping, always going, the next job will be the one. That'll be the one that makes me happy. But then I'd have a 6-month honeymoon period, and then I'd get a little bitter and go, they don't understand my talents. They don't appreciate me. And I'd jump to another job. And all the problems from the last one would show up there because I was running. I was just running. And my wife used to call me a Sunday jerk. Because on Saturday I was fine. I was happy. I was content. But on Sunday I could feel the weight of Monday coming. Have you ever felt like that, where that clock is ticking and on Sunday you feel that pressure? I mean, it's dark in here, so feel free to elbow your husband right now. And I felt that. Have you ever had one of those jobs where you have to divorce yourself in the parking lot before you go in? You have a conversation with your personality and go, I love you. You're talented and funny and interesting. They don't need you in work. I've asked for years, you stay in the car and read a magazine. I'm going to go die inside for 8 hours. We'll cry together in the commute home. I had that job. I've had those jobs. And so I started to think, okay, how do I change my life? I know God is not a boring God. He didn't create us for ordinary. He didn't rescue us for ordinary. He didn't send his son to the cross for us for average. So what do I do in that moment? I spent years working on that and ended up talking to people and writing this book, Quitter, about that experience. How do you close that gap? And that's what I want to talk about today, because the scary thing is, if you don't, life will still go on. You might never notice it, but it'll just go on and on. And I was reminded of that with a woman I met on an airplane. She was in her late 60s, and I gave her a copy of my book, Quitter. And I don't do that on every flight, I promise. I'm not like, oh, what's in my pocket? It's my Wall Street Journal bestselling book. Please, no photos. It drives my pores. Sign it? Okay. But we were talking about life and dreams, and so I gave her a copy of the book. And it's an awkward experience because they're reading it while you're sitting there, and you're trying to look out of the corner of your eye like, is her life changing right now? Is she getting out highlighters? Multiple highlighters. She's taking notes. Her teeth are brighter with my wisdom. But in the middle of the flight, she leaned over and she said, hey, what do you do when all the excuses you made to not chase your dream are gone? What do you do when they're all gone and you have time and all those excuses don't exist anymore? And that was a really sad question, and that's my fear for you and I. I don't want us to get to 80 or 90 and look back and realize we mortgaged 70 years of our life doing something God hadn't called us to because we are afraid. So what do we do in that moment? Because he's telling a big story. He's telling a big, wild story, and he invites us into it, not out of employment, but out of love. Did you ever realize that? That he doesn't need John Acuff. Like, I won't complete God. He's not going, oh, if only John would write that book, then my story would get out there. No, God will not be unleashed by my successes or handcuffed by my failures. He's God. He invites us into the story because he loves us and wants us to be part of it. And that's a gift. So when you stand on that edge, kind of that edge moment where you go, okay, ordinary isn't what God's called me to do. What happens? What are two things that you need to do? That's what I want to talk about today. And the first thing that I think we need to do when we kind of stand there and we feel this God moment is we need to ignore the voices. We need to ignore the voices, because the truth is this: fear only gets loud if you do something that matters. Fear only gets loud if you do something that matters. If you say, you know what, I'm going to rock vanilla right into the grave, fear will give you a free pass. Doubt and fear and hate will leave you alone. Fear never bothers people that are going to do average. But the second you go, okay, I might be supposed to do this, like there might be something I'm called to do, that's when fears start to get loud. That's when criticism starts to get loud. That's when hate starts to get loud. That's when people throw rocks. You don't get a rock thrown at you unless you stand up. But that's going to happen. And there's two types of fear and voices and criticism that come. One is external and one's internal. So the external one you could kind of just label as haters, which was a surprise to me. My mom had kind of said that people would like me and love me for the rest of time. That has not been my experience thus far. That's been a bit of a letdown, I'm not going to lie to you. And the problem is that you and I, a lot of times, have the ability to ignore all the compliments and overfocus on the one insult or the one bit of hate, don't we? I call it critics math, and it's a really simple math formula because I'm not good at math. Like, I'm the kind of guy, it takes me 87 moves if there's 3 cars in our driveway and I have to get one out, and like one ends up on the front lawn. My wife can do that in one move. I'm not a mathematician. So here's critics math. It's really simple. One insult plus 1,000 compliments equals one insult. One insult plus 1,000 compliments equals one insult. We can laser focus on that, can't we? Somebody gives you a compliment and you immediately go, oh, that was nothing. They compliment the gift you have and you go, oh, that's just something I like to do. And doubt and fear are like a muscle. The more you exercise them, the stronger they get. The more you buy into that lie, that what you're passionate about, what God wired you for is nothing. And instead you focus on the negativity. And I see this all the time. My dad's a pastor. I saw this in the church. I can ask pastors all the time, hey, who loves your ministry? Who loves what's going on in your church? And they'll go, oh, there's a handful of people that understand the vision. And if I go, hey, who hates what you're doing? Who's actively trying to get the youth minister fired? Who are those parents? They can tell me their name, where they live, what their last letter said, how thick their mustache is. They know those details. Businesses are the same way. When I consult with businesses, I can't tell you how many times they'll spend thousands of dollars to fix one customer complaint while they ignore every customer that loves them. This person matters the most, and I'm the same way. My book, Quitter, has, 165 5-star reviews on Amazon and 3 1-star reviews. Do you know which ones I have memorized? You know which ones I think about? And this happens to us. That happens to us in life. It happened to this guy named Larry David. I don't know if you're familiar with Larry David. He's the co-founder and co-creator of Seinfeld, most successful sitcom in the history of mankind. He also has a show on right now called Curb Your Enthusiasm. Anybody familiar with Curb Your Enthusiasm? I mean, I'm not. I don't have HBO. I was reading my Bible. Juke! Came back around full circle on it. Oh, that was great. I set the trap. I was like, come on in. Come on in. I got candy. So Larry David, huge, successful, wildly successful, lives in LA right now where they film the show, but he's from New York. So a few months ago, he goes back to New York for a bit of a homecoming. And while he's there, he goes to Yankee Stadium. And during the middle of the game, they find out that Larry David's in the crowd. And so they show his picture up on the big screen. And then they start to play the theme song from Curb Your Enthusiasm over the organ. And 50,000 people cheer for Larry David. Can you imagine what that moment must have felt like? I grew up outside of Boston, and my friend had season tickets to the Boston Celtics. And they were a few rows off of the floor, but you had to enter in through the players' tunnel. There's just like a towel separating the two, a curtain. And for a second, when you stepped out of that tunnel to go to the seat and onto the floor, you felt like it was all there for you. And I used to do that 10 times a game. Just walk out, and, step back in, shake it off, walk back out. I have issues. But that wasn't for me. This was really for Larry David. 50,000 people. And when the game was over, he walked to his car in the parking lot. And a stranger pulled up next to him in their car, and they rolled down the window. They said, "Hey, Larry, you suck." And then they drove away. Do you know who Larry David talked about the entire drive home? Do you know who he obsessed about to the reporter that wrote this article I read? The guy that had yelled at him from the car. 50,000 people disappeared. Critics' math made a stadium invisible. David Blaine can't do that kind of trick. David Copperfield can't pull it off. Chris Angel can't do that magic. That's the Chris Angel shimmy, by the way. It's a good one. That's how powerful critics' math is in our life. And sometimes the real challenge is that the criticism comes from people who are supposed to love us and protect us. A friend of mine named Liz is in her 40s. One day we were having a talk about dreams because I do this quitter conference in Nashville right down the street, and all these dreamers come together. And Liz was talking to me about that. She said, when I was in the 8th grade, my dream was to dance. I used to love to dance. And one day my mom pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you know you're not going to be a rockette, right? Like, you're not going to be a dancer, right? Do you think 8th grade dance happened much after that? Do you think Liz danced a whole lot after that conversation? Of course not." And I completely understand her mom's point of view. I'm a dad. I've got 2 amazing daughters. And you don't want your kids to discover they can't sing at American Idol, right? Like, that's not where you want the reality introduced to them. And it's going to happen if they come out and go, "I've had 20 years of vocal lessons." Oh, I get that. But here's the problem. When a pastor or a teacher or a boss or a friend or a parent tells you what you can't be, they're predicting a future they don't control. They don't know what you look like at 22 or at 32 or at 42 or at 52. They don't. What if Michael Jordan's dad, sophomore year of high school, and he doesn't make the varsity basketball team, pulls him aside and says, "Hey, you're not going to be a basketball player. That's not in the cards for you." And he becomes an accountant. And we miss Michael Jordan. And he would dominate the work league, don't get it wrong. But we would miss him. And some of us have let people speak into our identity that way, haven't we? When I talk to Liz about that story, she can tell it like it happened yesterday. That's still fresh. And so you've got to be careful about these external voices that speak into your identity. But the flip side of that is the internal voice. And a friend of mine challenged me about that. His name is Al Andrews. He has a ministry here in Franklin called Porter's Call. And his goal there is to work with musicians and the families of musicians because this town chews those people up, doesn't it? And he lets me get around the musician rule because he's friends with my dad, even though my dancing is lyrical. I mean, look at that. It's like it's on a hinge. It's not. That's my arm. The front row can tell, but the back row probably thinks I'm a robot. I'm not. But one day, we had a conversation. And he said, "Hey, what do your voices tell you?" And that's a weird question. Like, that's just a weird question. So I've been to counseling before, so I know how to answer those questions. Like, my dad didn't hug me enough. Is that the answer? But he kept asking. I said, "Why does it matter? What do you mean, what do my voices tell me?" And he said, "Well, I've asked 1,000 people that question. And nobody has a positive internal voice. Nobody's internal voice says, you are skinny enough. You're the best one to do that new job. People are going to love that. And so I started to think about, what do my voices tell me? The voices that I thought were friends, but are really foes. And so I started to write them down. And here's a voice that everybody hears the second they step off of average and step into God's dream. You'll hear a voice that says, who are you to do that? Who are you to think you could do that? You're not qualified enough or talented enough. Who are you to do that? And I heard that when I started to write the book Quitter, because it's a business book. And my first book was just a silly book. It had a unicorn illustration in it. People tell me things like, I love your book, I keep it in the bathroom, which is a weird compliment. But I heard that voice of doubt go, who are you to write a business book? You can't jump shelves. Who are you to think you're qualified enough for that? And you'll hear that voice. Maybe the voice you'll hear is, it's too late. Fear loves to tell you, it's too late. You don't have enough time. The window's closed. It's too late to dream. You know, dreaming is for this age. We always say that. Don't we say that about college years? We go, best years of your life. Or we tell college students, go to Europe while you can. Because maybe Europe will be closed when you're in your 30s, right? Like you'll go there and they go, oh, you're 32. You have to go to Branson, Missouri. I'm sorry. You don't get to come to Italy. You should have gone while you could. Best years of your life. Rest of your life? No. But we buy into that, and fear tells you it's too late. And so I started to ask people, what do your voices tell you? And it's my favorite moment of the Quitter Conference because the room changes. Because fear always tries to isolate you. Fear always tries to put you on an island. Do you know what fear fears? Community. Fear is terrified of this room, of you guys sharing life together in a real way. That's what fear is afraid of. And so you've got to share those voices and know that they're not telling you the truth. And the big lie is about your identity. And I love, love, love how much truth there is in here about who you are and what your identity really is. And one of my favorites is in Ephesians 2. Ephesians 2:10, for we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Who are you? You're art. You are art, created for good works that he's already prepared in advance. So as you step off of average and hear voices, whether they're from people that are real or just doubt you've carried around for years, maybe even decades, go back to this, run back to this, and ask the Bible, ask God, who am I? Who am I really? The second thing we need to do is stop trying to fix ourselves. We need to quit trying to fix ourselves. And culture kind of makes it seem like that's possible. Pop culture kind of feeds into that idea that we could fix ourselves. I mean, you see that in the end of Jerry Maguire. I love that movie. Tom Cruise runs in. He's always running in every film, so you can't tell how short he is. And he runs in. And what does he say to Renee Zellweger? You complete me. Oh, that's adorable. I mean, it's a lie, but it's adorable. You want to wreck your marriage? Ask your spouse to complete you. You want to just wreck it when you walk down the aisle after you've been pronounced man and woman. Say, baby, if you could fill every hole I have in my soul by like Thursday, that'd be awesome. You'll wreck your marriage. No boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife is going to complete you. They're not. And Christians are weird about marriage, especially when it comes to stuff like marital counseling. Because when you go to premarital counseling, people go, oh, it's great. Building a foundation of truth, that's great. Premarriage counseling. When you get married and then go to counseling after, they go, what went wrong? Was it porn? I bet it was porn. We think premarital counseling is for everyone and post is for failures. As if maybe when you walk down that aisle, you just got it all figured out. Like you did that first kiss and it was like, boom, I get life. I'm a huge fan of counseling. My wife and I have gone a number of times, and we've learned a lot. One of the things the counselor said to us was, John and Jenny, you both have tremendous insight into John. Which was his polite counselor way of saying, John, shut up. You're filling this life with you. But that happens. We think we can fix ourselves. We think our spouse will be our savior. And music tells us the same thing, doesn't it? I love that Coldplay song, I Will Fix You. I will fix you. And I think Coldplay is really talented. I think Chris Martin's an amazing songwriter, but he's not going to be able to fix you. I've seen him. He's like 80 pounds soaked. You know what? I can take Chris Martin. He's always wearing hoodies in the rain on the beach. It was all yellow. It's very sad. He's not going to be able to fix you. And we start to buy into that. And then the worst part is that church culture gets into the mix and tells you that maybe you do need to fix yourself. And you see this happen when people start to confess safe sins. Have you ever experienced that in the context of a small group or a group of friends where somebody goes, whew, I got to be honest tonight. I got to be authentic and transparent. Words we love. They go, like ODB in the Wu-Tang Clan, I got to give it to you raw. And you kind of lean in and go, what is he going to confess? What's about to come? And he goes, I haven't been reading my Bible every day. Oh, sinner! So filthy, I can feel it like a film on my body. And then the person next to them catches the safe sin virus, and they follow up with the same level. They go, yeah, I got to be honest too. Don't know how to say this. I haven't been journaling during my quiet time. Not journaling! The 11th commandment. I heard a pastor once say, yeah, because Jesus journaled so much in the Bible, didn't he? 2 favorite activities, walk on water, journal. Jesus just loved to grab a mug of coffee, sit by the Sea of Galilee, and journal. And you're not journaling, and you call yourself a Christian. And if you're in that small group, if you're in that setting, and you've got a big, neon, gross Christian sin, like a real one, you can't follow those guys. You can't go after that. Like when I was in the 9th grade, if I was in that small group, here's what that would have looked like. Okay, so you didn't journal this weekend. What did I do? Oh, that's right. It was snowing. I live in Massachusetts. So I told my dad, the pastor, that I was going to go sledding, but instead I went to the dump and dug through like a 200-foot tall pile of trash looking for porn. Also broke into some bulldozers looking for porn. But back to not reading his Bible guide. Let's pray for him. Hedge of protection. You can't be porn guy after journal guy. You can't follow I didn't journal enough with I looked at so much porn this weekend. So what do? You stuff it down. You start to hide it. You start to use the Christian F word. Fine. Hey, how's your marriage? Fine. How's work? Fine. How's college? Fine, fine, fine. And you become this plastic, fantastic Christian. And we didn't invent that. We really didn't. The idea of fixing ourselves. I mean, you see that all through the Bible. What's the first thing that Adam and Eve do when they realize they've blown it? They hide and they try to fix it by making clothes to cover their nakedness. And I love the absurdity of that, as if maybe God wouldn't notice. Like he'd walk in the cool of the day and be like, Eve, something's different about you. Is it your hair? Oh, this? No. Fig is the new black. Naked felt so 2000 and late, so I just... And you see it throughout the Bible. Prodigal son story. He comes home with a fix. You're familiar with that story. You've heard it a million times. Young son says to his dad, I want my inheritance, which is like saying, I wish you were dead. Gets all his money, runs off to the Jersey Shore, and 4 locos that night away. That's not a direct translation. That's the message. And he comes home. When he comes to his senses, he doesn't come home for forgiveness. He comes home with a fix. He comes home to say, make me like a servant. We're good at coming up with fixes. And I saw this once when I was in the 2nd grade, and I've never been able to forget this moment of what it looks like to try to fix something. And I promise you, when I experienced it the first time, when I saw it, I didn't think, someday I'll talk about this. Like I wasn't a weird 8-year-old that was like, I see sermons. But it happened, and it happened at Chuck E. Cheese. And growing up as a kid, Chuck E. Cheese was the jam. I love Chuck E. Cheese. For one thing, it had Skeeball. I don't know if you've ever played Skeeball before. It's a great game. I thought it'd be kind of funny to make like Skeeball shirts and have a league night, like on a Tuesday night, just show them and be like, pardon me, ma'am, Skeeball league night. That'd either be really fun or really creepy at Chuck E. Cheese. But Skeeball's not the greatest game if you think about it. Because essentially what you say is, hey, 4-year-old, come here. Here's an 8-pound solid wooden ball. Any other day of the year you touch an object like this, I'm spanking you. Today, my only expectation is that you whip it. Don't worry, we've got 4-inch nets on either side. Here's some sugar. So maybe Skeeball, it wasn't the best thing, but what was the ice cream and hot dog condiment bar. They had this fixing bar that stretched for like a 2nd grade mile. It was majestic. And I don't know about your childhood, but during mine, my parents didn't give me a whole lot of direct access to sprinkles. Like very rarely would they say, hey, here's a big bowl of sprinkles. You do whatever the little man inside wants. Because they knew what the little man inside wanted was sprinkles. But on Chuck E. Cheese Day, I controlled sprinkle distribution. Sprinkle destiny was in my hands. So it was with great joy that I'd take that bowl of ice cream and go up to that condiment line. And I was there one day for a birthday party in the second grade, and there was a fifth grader from another party next to me. He was the first person in line. And he took his bowl, and he went up to that dispenser, and he pressed down as hard as he could, and out came mustard. He was at the wrong end of the line. He was at the hot dog end of the line. Epic fail. But it was okay because right away, a Chuck E. Cheese employee came over and said, hey, it's all right, here you go. Here's a new bowl of ice cream. And I'll never forget this little boy's face because he looked down at his bowl that had been ruined, and he looked up at the new bowl, and he was so ashamed at having failed, so embarrassed. They said, no, it's okay. I don't need that. I'll just stir it in. As if maybe if he stirred hard enough and long enough, he wouldn't be able to taste the mustard. But you know that's not going to work. Mustard is not a shy condiment. Mustard kicks the door and I was like, boom, I'm mustard. I'm yellow. But he just kept stirring. And what was bright yellow mustard and bright white ice cream became this pale yellow emo mush. It was very depressing. It was like a bowl of Counting Crows songs. And then he walked back to his table to choke down some mustard-flavored ice cream. Now, I don't know about your life, but in mine, I've put worse things than just mustard. I've made a lot of mistakes and put a lot of mistakes inside my bowl. And not like the safe Christian mistakes, like the kind when a character makes them in a movie, you hope he gets hit by a car later on in the film. Like that kind of mistake. And for a long time, I thought church and God and all this stuff was just a different set of tools to stir with. But it was still on me. Prayer, fellowship, community, stir, 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 stir. And I tried that for years and years and years. And if you've ever tried that, you know that's exhausting, isn't it? To try to do that. And about 7 years ago, I got to a place in my life where I just couldn't fix me with me. It wasn't working anymore. Some consequences caught up to me that were so big that I couldn't fix them. And when I brought my broken bowl to Christ, I learned a secret. And it shouldn't have felt like a secret. I mean, I grew up in the church. I'm a pastor's kid, which is only slightly better than a cop's kid because at least we didn't have access to guns. But I should have known this. This shouldn't have been a secret. But here's the secret. Jesus came for the broken bowls. That's who he came for. They're not the PS. They're the reason for the rescue. The broken bowls. And as you read the Bible, it shouts that. One of my favorite verses that talks about this is in Mark 2:17. Because they say to Jesus, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? And Jesus says, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. And I just didn't know that. I had missed that. I'd bought the enemy's lie that you have to be healthy enough to be close to Jesus. Where it's the opposite. He came looking for the broken bowls. And realizing that, bumping into that truth, changed my life. Because suddenly the bowl wasn't something I was supposed to hide or clean up so that I could go on an adventure with Jesus maybe someday when I got it all together. The bowl wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was actually a lighthouse for a doctor that was looking for me. It was a neon sign that shouted out to Jesus, I can't do this. I've tried, I can't, I need you. And that changed my life. And when it comes to dreams, when it comes to you not having an ordinary life, you not looking back at 90 and going, where did it all go? I think that every great story, every great adventure that God calls us on has the same starting point. And it's the gospel. That's exactly where the best stories start. If I could summarize the entire gospel, if I could put the entire gospel into 4 words, these are the words I'd use. Be sick, be loved. Be sick, be loved. Be sick, come with the broken bowl. Don't try to fix it first. Have you ever had one of those weekends where you go, I need like a 30-day waiting period before I go back to church? Like that one's going to take some time to shake off. Just come, be sick. I love that in the prodigal son story. There's two people in motion. One walks, one runs. We're the walkers. We still have a running God who runs towards the broken bowl, towards the filth. Be sick. And in that moment, know that you're going to be loved. And it won't make sense. It can't make sense. We get something we don't deserve, something we can't control. We get grace. And God is going to change you. God is going to put you into the adventure of your life, of his life, his story. And so that's my hope for you and I, is that when the voices get loud, and they will if you do something that matters, when they get loud, that we'll remember this. That when it seems impossible, that we'll remember this. When we're tempted to try to fix ourselves before we get close to Christ, that we'll remember this. That what the gospel calls us to do, that what God is inviting us to do, is to be sick and be loved. Be sick, be loved. Let's pray. Lord, remind us that we will never outdream you. We will never have a hope bigger than your hands. We will never come up with an idea that you say, no, that's beyond my ability. Lord, help us not be average. There's so many chances to be average every day. And you call us to be your children, heirs to the throne. How extraordinary is that? You didn't go to the cross to rescue average. You came to the cross because you love us. And you invite us into this experience, this journey. Lord, help us remember that you don't do better. You don't do improved. You do new. The old is gone. The new has come. Not the better, not the slightly improved, the new. When the voices tell us we're not qualified for this adventure with you, remind us we're not, but we're qualified because of who you are and who we are in you. We don't have to get smart enough or talented enough or anything enough. We just get to be your children. How special is that? You fix problems with parties. Who does that? When the prodigal son comes home, that's how you fix the problem. God, help us bring our broken bowls. Help us remember who you are and who we are in you. And as the world gets loud and as average gets enticing, remind us of those 4 words. Be sick, be loved. Be sick, be loved. Amen. Hey, thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.